Okay, in this video we're going to show you a start to finish approach to making the candle holder for art metal. And basically the candle holder is supposed to end up on a piece of metal that is 4 inches tall by 12 inches long, and then that's going to get rolled into a candle holder. So I'm going to show you how to take multiple objects in one big go here and drop them into the dashboard for LibreCAD and drop them into the workspace, size them to each other, and then of course make them fit into something that's going to be 4 inches tall by 12 inches long, even though the graphics won't start out that size. So here we go. I'm going to start by opening up LibreCAD, and I'm going to drop my first object in, which is a star, and then I'm going to add an additional object, which I've shown in previous videos. So I'm going to import a block, and that's going to be the heart. And let's just drop this in place here. I'm going to turn my grid on, drop it at the same height. There we go. Alright, so there are two different sizes, and instead of sizing them down, I'm going to start by drawing the rectangle that is the right proportions. Now if you take a look at this grid, we can use it to help us draw something that's 4 units high and 12 units long, but when we look in this bottom corner here, there's a scale here. It says 100/1000. And what that means is when you look at these grids spaced out here, each one of these big units here, big pieces of the grid, are represents 1,000 inches, and these little ones represent 100 inches. So it's telling you what you're looking at. If I zoom in, you'll notice at some point this scale will change. Right there, now it's telling me that these big squares is 100 inches, the small ones are 10 inches. And if we keep going, eventually you get nice and close, and it shows you that each one of these little squares is an inch, and that each one of these bigger squares is 10 of those small ones, so that's 10 inches. So if you truly wanted to draw something that was exactly the right size, you could do so, but the problem with that is it would be a tiny little 4 inch tall by 12 inch rectangle showing up on this page. And how would we scale these things down easily enough so that we could land on that little tiny rectangle? It's frustrating. So I'm going to show you a different approach. We're going to leave these things here, and we're going to just choose the squares that are on the page. Even though they're not the life size that we want, we're just going to use them to our advantage here. So I'm going to start by making sure that just my grid snap is on, and I'm going to attempt to draw a rectangle here. So we choose our line tool, and when we click on it, all of our options come up. There's a rectangle, and I'm going to draw from here. I'm going to draw, let's go with 2 units down, which means that I'm going to have to go only 6 units over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there it is. Oops, that was a mistake. Let's try that again. A rectangle, 2 units up, 6 units over. Now that represents the right proportions, because if you take a look at a normal 4 by 12, that means it's 3 times longer than it is tall. And although this is 2 by 6, it's still 3 times longer than it is tall. Okay, so it's just about maintaining the right ratio. A little bit of math might be involved for some people in order to do that properly. But this rectangle represents the approximate shape of the piece of metal that we need. And so we've drawn it bigger than life size. I mean, if we were to take our ruler tool right now and measure it, and if I measure from this point to point, it's telling me that that's 2,000 inches big. So that's not how big we're going to cut it. We will scale it down in a bit here. So we've drawn it at the approximate shape that we need. Well, it's actually the exact shape that we need, but it's just big. And we're going to bring these objects into it now. So I'm going to use, I'm going to select this star, and I'm going to use the modify move command, and it's asking me for a reference point. I'm going to choose the bottom tip. I'll turn off the grid, and I will choose the bottommost point here. Now it's asking me for a target point, so that's where I'm going to actually have to turn off this snap. I'll turn the grid back on, and I will choose my reference point somewhere in the middle of the object here, and we'll place it right there. And I'm going to delete the original, There we go. And I think what I'm going to do, you know, that's actually not a bad size for this project. So I don't think I'm going to scale that up at all. I'm going to keep that as the size. And I'm going to copy another one. So I think I want to have a total of 4 shapes in this project. So let's actually bring this guy in here. So you can just grab and drag too. Sometimes that works. Oops. Let's undo that. Hit escape to clear the selection box, and then go ahead and grab and drag. And grabbing and dragging works as long as it is an object that is all red like that. If it's an object that lights up with blue like this one does, and you decide to grab a blue node, what ends up happening when you try to drag this is you're going to skew it. See, it stretches all of those dots and it wrecks the object. So when you're grabbing something that does have blue dots in it, make sure you grab from the red line, and then as you make movements, you're actually moving the object. You're not stretching the object. Alright, so let's do that. Let's grab the heart, and there's no blue dots, so I'm going to bring it in. And when I look at this now, I just feel that that heart's too big. Okay, I want to make that heart about the same size as this star. So let's measure the star. We'll use the measure tool, point to point, and we will choose just to grab that piece of geometry there. So we'll use the snap, the endpoint snap tool setting here, and that's telling us it's 992. Alright, so if we're going to scale down, let's get our calculator out. We have the small number on top, so 992 divided by, and let's measure the star, the heart. So we will use our measuring tool, and we're going to go point to point, and this time I'm just going to use sort of a free point here, because I'm going to measure right at the top here, about there, and all the way down. Now I'm going to force it to go vertical. There we go, a vertical snap, and I'm going to just measure to there, and it's giving me 1781. So 992 divided by 1781, and let's go back. So divided by 1781, and we need a scale factor of 0.5569 or 0.557. Let's use 0.557. So let's do that. Let's scale this heart down now. I'll hit escape to get out of all these menu options. I'll turn off all these snaps, select the heart, and modify, scale, and it's asking for a reference point, so I'm going to snap to this actually. I'll snap to the tip of the heart. There it is, and 0.557 was what we wanted to scale, and we want to delete the original. Let's do it. There it is. So it's shrunk it down. I'm going to have to move that now. And I'm stuck on this sort of snap. Let's turn that snap off. Let's turn the grid on. And let's line it up with this guy here, actually, and force it to stay. Actually, we can just snap over. That works. Right there. Done. Escape out. Now, that looks pretty good. They're about the same size, and all that's left to do is to maybe copy a couple more out. And I want to get the spacing right, so I think I'm going to visually use this center line of the entire rectangle and try to space these two out equally. Maybe this just needs to move, so I'm going to go modify, move. That's another way to move things. I'll use the grid snap, and I'll just move it over. Alright, that looks a bit better. Maybe a bit more. Modify, move. Use the grid snap one more time. Okay, I'm happy with that so far. And I think I will copy both of these at once and bump them over. So I'll select them both, and I'll modify, move, copy, and I'll choose this as the reference point, and I'll move them over to say about there. Delete the, I'll keep the originals because I need to, and there we go. So we've copied out 4 of those. Now from here you guys can take your time and you can tweak each one of these objects left and right, moving it. And remember that if you want to move it only horizontal without changing the height, because sometimes you slip and you move the height, then you just force this restrict horizontal snap on. Now when I move, go modify, move, no matter where I grab it, I can't actually lift it, I can't move it vertically, it's forced to stay horizontal. Alright, and I probably should have deleted the original, but I'll just do it manually. There we go. Okay, so you get that you got to move them around. Now, this whole entire thing, I mean, it looks like the right shape for the project, but we know that this thing is massive. It's way bigger than the project itself. So if we were, again, to go and measure, you know, I'm gonna actually force these to become a block now. So I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to use the blocking command, and I'm going to create a block, and it's going to have a reference start point, say, in the corner, and I'm just going to call it candle holder. There it is. Now this is a block, which means that it's all one object and it moves as one now. Okay, that's a handy thing to do so that when you scale it, you don't distort anything and mess up the positioning. So I'm going to scale the whole thing as one object. So I'll select it, and I'm going to actually I'm going to measure first. So measure, and we'll use object endpoints, and I'm going to measure. Let's turn off that snap. There we go. From there to there is 2,000 inches. And what I want is 4 inches. So going to the calculator, I put the small number on top. I want 4, and I'm going to divide it by 2,000. So the scale factor is 0.002. Let's do the scale. I'm going to select my geometry. I'm going to modify scale, choose a reference point, and I'm going to scale it to 0.002, delete the original, done. Now it's gone. You see, that's why we worked on this whole thing as a large object and scaled it down after, because how are you going to shrink hearts down to a little tiny box that you drew? If I zoom in with the mouse wheel, here's our project. Let's double check one more time with the ruler. I'm going to snap to these endpoints. It is now 4 inches tall, and I mean, I can even count. You see 4 boxes, and the scale is at each one of these little guys is 0.1 of an inch, and each one of the big guys is an inch. So there we have it. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 inches, and this is 12 inches. So we are complete. We're going to file and save this project as candle holder brick Sandhu on the desktop, and we are done. This project is now ready to take into the back room to cut.